That's why they call me bad company. I can't deny. Bad company.
All right, welcome to the W2W review. I am the Knight, and joining me as always is the Raider Pirate. What's going on, Pirate?
What's going on, Raider Nation?
All right, Raider Nation. Today is Tuesday, November 15th, 2016. I am getting ready to head off on a much-deserved vacation, in my opinion, anyway. Every year, I dedicate a week to my daughter. I take her to Disneyland. I'll be heading to Anaheim, California in the morning. So we thought we would fast-track this thing today and start looking at the Houston Texans and give myself a chance to kind of get my opinion out there on what's going on. So, Pirate, what do we have to start things off today?
Well, we got a couple of articles. In the first section, there's an article out there on Pro32. That's www.pro32.ap.org by Christy Reekin. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. But she had an article on there. The Texans look to improve before facing the Raiders. And, she went on to talk, they talk in here about how basically the Texans have been struggling a little bit on the road. They've come back. They got their first victory against Jacksonville, but how it really was a difficult game. They needed pretty much a special teams touchdown. They needed a defensive touchdown, special teams help to beat the Jaguars 24-21. She talked about how, basically Brock Osweiler only threw for 99 yards in that entire game. He was not injured. He wasn't yanked. He wasn't pulled. That's not a typo. 99 yards pretty much. But how they were able to rush for about 181 yards with Lamar Miller. They brought a guy up, one of their rookies up from the practice squad, and he did a fairly decent job for them. Their offensive line has been a little bit banged up on the right tackle side. And how basically, even though they're a 6-3 football team, a lot of people are looking past this football team. They're saying that this football team is not very good. They may not even be the best team in a very weak division. So, again, when you're kind of looking at these guys, the first thing that comes to mind, again, I don't know about you, but certainly for myself, is trap game.
That's a word that we don't like to use. We don't like to hear, right? But we find ourselves in a situation where we're coming off a big victory Sunday night, national television, against our division foes, the Super Bowl champions, the Denver Broncos. We go out there, we dominate that game. We show why we are a very good team this year. And then you go on the road after a bye week to face a team that, even though is doing well in the standings, have their struggles. This is not a very good football team statistically. So this is where the trap game scenario comes into play. And I firmly believe that the only way we should lose this game is by us beating ourselves, letting it get to our head. We cannot allow this team to get any type of momentum, whether it's throwing the football or running the football. And when you look at Brock Osweiler, he's your prototypical statue in the backfield. This should go well for our defense. The example that I like to give before I kick it back to you, Pirate, is what I mean by getting into our own heads. Sometimes when you mentally feel like you have the chance to dominate a team, this is where you could hurt yourself. Like when you look at that Denver game on Sunday night, we had a 3-possession lead. We were up by 17 points. We go into prevent defense. You're kind of already in relax mode. It's really hard to shut out a team in the National Football League unless it's a close scoring game, like a 6-0 heading into the last drive of the fourth quarter. You're still playing to win. We found ourselves up 17 points. We went into prevent defense. They throw a quick screen pass and go 69 yards for a touchdown because, for one, we were in prevent. For two, I don't think they were mentally ready to stop the Denver Broncos at that point, just because they knew they pretty much had it in the bag. This is the kind of mentality I don't want this team to have, letting Houston come into Mexico and thinking that they're overly dominant in this game and getting caught up into the hype of themselves because it's a young football team. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this football team, this game, the fact, like you said, that it's in Mexico, the fact that it's quote unquote a home game, but not a home game, the fact that it's against a football team that is struggling. They were giving up a lot of yards rushing. The Texans were. They've kind of corralled that in the last couple of weeks against Detroit and Jacksonville. So they've gotten a little bit stronger. In the middle, Vince Wilfork had a groin injury. I'm not exactly sure if he's going to be playing when we play them or not. But DJ Reader kind of came in and their draft pick and did a very decent job. So we know that this team still has a very, very tough defense. And like you said, if you take a look at what happened in Tampa, and then you take a look at what happened again going up against the Denver Broncos, a lot of football that was played there, a lot of hard football, a lot of running, a lot of banging, a lot of smashing, a lot in terms of the quarters. If you look at the Tampa Bay game going into that overtime, then coming in and having to come in and play a very physical game against Denver. Now you've got to go to Mexico. Whoever made this schedule, in my opinion, this is kind of ridiculous. Why not just throw London in there? Hey, let's go to London too, and that'll be a home game for you guys. So when you look at it, like you said, huge game in terms of the fact that we beat our division foe. We talked about this earlier. They had a chance to beat Kansas City. They blew that chance. They come back. They've got a chance to beat Denver, a nationwide audience. And they showed the world we can do this. We can change up our game plan, and we can come in and we could play with the best of them. Now the question is, is Houston a really good football team? Is Brock Osweiler beginning to make his strides? 99 yards. I mean, that's, Bill O'Brien said he was happy with the way that Osweiler kind of coordinated the offense. But my gosh, 99 yards is just not very good. You're not going to win a lot of games like that. They're statistically not a very good football team in that sense as well, numbers-wise, in terms of being able to move the ball consistently, whether it's through the air, or through the ground. I mean, again, they had a big game on the ground, but this is a team that, in my opinion, is still dangerous. The Texans have given us fits in the past, and I think that they're still a team that is capable, defensively at least, of giving us some problems. And if we turn the ball over, if we're lackadaisical, if we're tired, if we're listening to the media clippings,
right,
if we're getting prepared for Kansas City, this is exactly that type of team. This is not a bad football team. People are saying it's a bad football team because of the record in the division that they're in. But this is a six-win football team, winning record. The Raiders have a lot to prove here.
And that's where the whole trap comes in, right? Because when you look at this statistically and you look at it mentally and all that, we should dominate this game. Brock Osweiler, having trouble saying his name today, but he's the prototypical guy we want to face. If we could put him back there and force him to throw the football, we have the kind of secondary that could fly around. Now, we got to make sure that they don't run the football. I mean, this is a guy that Khalil Mack sacked 5 times last season in one game because he's a statue. He doesn't have a quick release. So we just need to be on our A game. So a lot of the times when you go into a game where you know that the offense fits your defense and your offense could attack any kind of defense, that we've been proving that this season, that we have the type of offense that can go up against anybody, you start to feel like you should dominate this football game. And we play Monday night, so we have to take in consideration that the Kansas City Chiefs, the Denver Broncos, they play Sunday. Now, if the Kansas City Chiefs go in Sunday and they lose that football game, then mentally that kind of can be disturbing too, because now you go into facing a team like the Texans where you think you should dominate them, knowing that you have that kind of edge. You're not going to lose any ground, but you have an opportunity to gain some ground. I think this is where coaching is the key moving forward, because Jack Del Rio needs to make sure that he grasps this football team and keeps them mentally focused because they're so young.
Yeah, and again, take a look at this. it's very clear. This football team is averaging 17.9 points per game. They're 29th in the NFL. The Raiders averaging somewhere around 30 points per game. This offense is only getting about 308 yards per game. Now, we're not talking passing. We're talking total. Right. We're talking total yards per game. Punt returns. Everything that you could put in there. They're 30th, 308.8 yards per game. In terms of passing yards, 187.3. That's 32nd. They're the worst team throwing the ball in the National Football League. And in terms of rushing the ball, this is the only thing that they got going for them. 121.4 yards per game. They're ranked 5th. Now, if we can come in and we can just understand, okay, these guys, we got to shut down the run. We have to shut down the run. I think we can be very successful. But then when you turn around and you look, you know what? These guys got 19 sacks on the season. They can pressure the quarterback. They're playing really good defense. Brian Cushing's flying around out there. Jadeveon Clowney is starting to kind of, come into his own as well. So you got a lot of guys out there that, that have played and play well and are disciplined. Offensively, not disciplined, not playing very well. You can look past this team. But defensively, like I said, this defense, if they come in and they try to do something, in my opinion, I'd come in and I'd just try to run the ball again. Because if you can keep the ball out of these guys' hands, even when they have time, they can only score 17 points no matter what. They can only put together a 300-yard game. Even when they have time, I would eat this clock. I would play time of possession. This is the perfect type of game. I think being in Mexico, all of the variables that go into this, play it safe, run the football, attack when you can, do some play action, and just continue to get those first downs, eat the clock, and maybe not even run the ball, but like what Bill Musgrave has been doing, short passes to sort of simulate the run, but just keep moving the chains, eat up the clock, and they can get away with this one. But if they get a turnover, like we saw in the game against Jacksonville, and if they are able to play the field position battle, then like I said, we could run into an upset here very easily.
The key for me right now is time of possession. Like you said, run the football, control the clock, keep the ball out of their hands. Like we mentioned earlier, this offense is at times unstoppable when it's on. Our offense can really just generate yards. They can generate points. We're averaging 30 points a game. Going up against a team that can only score up to 17 points, this fits right into that wheelhouse of what we want our defense to be. If I was Jack Del Rio, I would really sit the defense down and say, we want to make this a defensive style game. We want you guys to, it's really on you guys. You guys do your job. There's no way that they should lose this football game. That's where the trap word comes in. We got to make sure that mentally we're prepared to smack them in the mouth. Every game from this point forward should be a statement game for the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah.
But I think even more so this week, this is a team that we should beat handily. And we need to go out there and do that to show that we're going to win the games that we should win, and we're going to fight and pull out victories on games that maybe some people think we shouldn't win. I think that's key moving forward. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up our first segment. When we get back, we're going to look more into the numbers and really kind of put our thoughts on this matchup and where we should dominate and how we should dominate this football game. So stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the W2W Review. I am the Knight. Joining me, as always, is the Raider Pirate. we're going to get into our game prediction breakdowns brought to you by Raiders411.com. All right, Pirate, what kind of numbers are we looking at this week?
Yeah, so once again, this is kind of a strange game. It's kind of a game where you're talking about a sort of a high-powered offense going up against a good defense, and then vice versa on the other side when you take a look at what it is that Houston's doing, in terms of running the ball against our defense. So if we just kind of look at the numbers, Brock Osweiler right now, he's got about 1,800 yards, 11 touchdowns. You compare that to Derek Carr, 2,500 yards roughly, 2,505. 17 touchdowns. I think obviously advantage goes to Derek Carr. Even when the Raiders were running the ball the way that they did last week, Derek Carr still had some decent numbers. The Houstons were running the ball really well. Osweiler had 99 yards. When you take a look at the rushes, you combine Lamar Miller and Alfred Blue. They've got close to 1,000 yards there. Latavius Murray, DeAndre Washington, only about 700 yards. So again, the advantage could go to the Houston Texans in terms of the run game. You look at Hopkins, Fuller. They've got about 800 combined yards at this point, about 5 touchdowns. You take a look at Amari Cooper, 800 yards, only 2 touchdowns on his own, but you throw in Michael Crabtree's almost 600 yards with 6 touchdowns, and once again, your advantage goes to the Oakland Raiders. In terms of yards per game, the Raiders at 400 yards per game, the Texans around 308. So again, advantage offensively overall to the Raiders, averaging about 100 yards rushing, 300 yards passing. If you look at the rush yards per game, you got 121.4 for the Texans, 127.8 for the Raiders. They got to run this ball. Passing yards per game, 273.3 for the Raiders, 187.3 for the Houston Texans. So again, if you take a look at it, this Oakland Raider football team offensively clearly should be a lot better than this Houston Texan offensive football team.
And this is where the numbers really play a big dividend. I mean, I'm not the biggest statistic guy, but when you look at the statistics here, we proved in the last game against the Denver Broncos how efficient this offense could be. We went up against the Denver Broncos, who's a top 5 defense. I think they were ranked number 3 or number 2 going into that game. And we put up 30 points. So we're going into a game, again, where the strength of the football team is their defense. And I believe that they're top 5 as well in total defense. So when you look at the numbers and what we're able to put up, where Carr's has the ability to throw 300-plus yards on you, and guys like Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree can run routes and catch the ball all over you, I'm not afraid of their defense. I'm just not. This offense has proven that no matter how good the defensive is, whatever their strength is, that we can attack it and we will find ways to attack it. And this is where Bill Musgrave has really grown on me. He's really smart about knowing exactly how he wants to attack you, whether it's sucking you in with the short passes and then hitting you deep or running the football. This is a great matchup for our Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, and again, if you look, like you said, Houston number 4 in the league. Defensively, the Raiders all the way down there at 25. So once again, even though this offense isn't great for Houston, they can run the football. And if the Raiders have struggled with the run at points. They've gotten a lot better, I think, as they've really begun to communicate a lot more. We're seeing them fill the right gaps, not make those eye violations they were talking about early on in the season. You're seeing a lot more maturity coming out of this team. And again, it has a lot to do with switching up players, switching up personnel, and then I think adjusting the scheme to the strength of the players that they've had and not vice versa. Early on, we saw this football team really trying to fit square pegs into round holes. And I think we're past that at this point. So I'm looking with 2 weeks to prepare for this particular football team. I'm looking for Jack Del Rio and Ken Norton to have a really good game plan lined up for these guys. Offensively, like you said, When you look at Houston, number 4 overall, giving up about 317 yards per game. So, again, when you look at it, about 196 passing yards, 120 rushing yards. So, again, they're going to be susceptible to the run, not giving up a lot of yards in the passing game. To me, like I said, once again, I would pound the ball, keep it with a time of possession type of battle, and just try to get out of this one and on, kind of on to the next one, because like you said, this could be, so many different things could go wrong here. This team could start reading its own press clippings. This team could be tired from the amount of snaps that they've played over the last 3 or 4 games, with the longer games and the time of possession, particularly offensively. I mean, we just dominated. This offense was on the field. If you look at both the Tampa game and the Denver game, this offense was on the field a long, long time. So now, are they going to have the same type of get-off against this team? We don't know. If they can, this offense just might be unstoppable.
This game comes down to me with our defense, and it's a defense that has improved over the course of the last 3 games. And when you look at this football team, even if the Texans were to slow our offense down, we're probably still good for 20 points. And this is a team that can only score 17. So I do believe that Jack Del Rio, Ken Norton Jr. are really going to be focusing in on their defensive scheme. And when you look at what the Houston Texans bring to the table, their main focus is going to be against the run. And ever since we put Perry Riley Jr. in the middle, this run defense has gotten better. You also have the emergent play from an undrafted free agent in Darius Latham, who really came on against that Denver game and showed his dominance in the middle. And we should be getting Stacey McGee hopefully back healthy and be in there, who's been our best defensive interior lineman this season thus far. So with all that being said, and we focus in on stopping LeVar Miller, I don't think it's not a matter of thinking at this point. There's just no way that Brock Osweiler, even with our questionable secondary at times, can beat us. So again, this all lines up for not only a Raider victory, but it has the potential to be a dominant victory.
Yeah, and again, if you take a look at it, I think this has been a huge letdown for the Houston Texans. I think Brock Osweiler, the way that he's been struggling, it's really hurt DeAndre Hopkins. You take a look at Hopkins, this is an explosive playmaker, probably one of the most dangerous wide receivers in the NFL. Only 45 receptions, 482 yards at this point. But the thing that really stands out is the fact that he's only got 10.7 yards per reception. This was a deep ball guy, a guy that was going to tear the lid off of your defense. His longest reception this year, 35 yards. He's only got 3 touchdowns. So while Sean Smith may be coming back from injury, and, once again, we know that there are some limitations with Sean Smith and the bigger corners that we play. They can't seem to get the ball to Hopkins. They just can't seem to utilize the same types of plays that he was getting a year ago, 2 years ago, when he had absolute breakout numbers. So like you just said, it's very clear at this point. You've got to focus all your attention on Lamar Miller. Akeem Hunt, who, kind of came up and, was one of their undrafted players. You got to focus on him too, but Lamar Miller's going to be the guy. 168 attempts, 720 yards. He's got a 45-yard long rush, 2 touchdowns on the season. This is the guy that we've got to focus on. And I think that if we can do that and we can play time of possession, we should be able to make it out of this game. This is serious. We need this football game. And I think we're going to get this football game on a Monday night. I think we do it in impressive fashion. But like we said, this is the NFL. And if you make mistakes, if you make turnovers, if we get 22 penalties, if we, fumble a ball here or give up poor field position, allow a punt return, anything like that, like I said, this is a dangerous football team that is, they haven't won 6 games by mistake. They've won 6 games by following what they do, which is running the football and playing good defense. So we really have to get in there and take this thing seriously. We have the better team. We should have the better outcome on Monday.
This is where Jack Del Rio's philosophy really thrives with me. Protect the football, play great defense, and have good special teams. He likes to utilize all three aspects of his game. They've been doing it well thus far. You know Derek Carr is going to be very protective of the football. You know that this defense may have its struggles, but it's going to play it has been playing the last 3 weeks such a different style of defense, and it's working. So we focus on LeVar Miller. We stop the run. The problem with Hopkins is that Brock Osweiler is not that guy that's going to get the ball down the field. He has the arm, he has the size, but he tends to hold on to the ball too long. I think Khalil Mack at this point has got to be licking his chops. There was a reason why he sacked him 5 times last year. This guy just does not have a quick release. This whole defensive line should be able to generate an effective pass rush that's going to force this guy to try to get rid of the ball quickly, which plays into the hands of our secondary. We don't know if Sean Smith's going to be back this week, but TJ Carey showed that he has the ability once again to really be I wouldn't call him a shutdown corner, but he's a good enough corner to really, hold that outside edge. And DJ Hayden has been spectacular this season compared to what he has been in the past in the slot. So all we have to do is stop the run and generate a pass rush. That doesn't necessarily have to be sacks. Khalil Mack is leading the league right now in pressures over the last 3 weeks with 21 pressures. So, again, this game totally lines up with what we need to do moving forward to dominate this football game. With that being said, Pirate, what is your prediction on how you think this game is going to end up and your score?
Well, like I said, I think we've got to get out to an early start. There's one thing that this Texan team doesn't want to do, that's try to play catch-up at this point. All of the things that we talked about in this segment really put on display why you don't want to be playing catch-up. Quarterback that can't get the ball down the field, you rely on your running game, field position, good defense. None of those things help you when you're down by 14. This football team's got to come out. If they win the toss, they've got to take the ball. They've got to drive the ball down the field, and they've got to score touchdowns. If we go down there and we mess around and we allow them to get the ball first and, so we get the ball out of the half and all of these different types of things, and we keep them in this game until the end, again, that's going to play a little bit more into O'Brien's philosophy. I think Jack Del Rio really, like we said, come out, move the chains, short passing game, strong running game, eat up time of possession. 28-21 Raiders in Mexico.
I like that prediction, man. And I really believe that when you look at the setup of this game, the offense versus defense, defense versus offense, on either side of how you look at it, this should be a game where we should be able to get into the red zone, generate points, especially touchdowns, to really kind of set the tone early. And as long as we come in, we set the tone, we set it early, we get some early touchdowns, put them in a position where they need to throw the football, this should be an easy victory for our Oakland Raiders. And I say that loosely because it is the National Football League. It's give or take. You never know what's going to happen. But I really see this game getting out of hand for Houston. I really believe that Derek Carr, having a, some people would say mediocre game against Denver, that's because we ran the ball so well. So I think Denver, I believe that Derek Carr is going to have a breakout game throwing the football against his Houston Texans, especially with his tight ends down the seam. I see the Raiders going up on top and winning this game 28-17. That's my prediction, 28-17 Oakland Raiders. We'd like to thank you for tuning in today. We want to remind you that you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at The Will to Win, or email us any questions or concerns at thew2w@gmail.com. That is the w2w@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook at The Will to Win, as well as Oakland Raider Football, where we go on and do live extra point takes there as well. And we'd like to once again thanks Raiders411.com for sponsoring today's show. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Until then, I'm the Knight, that's the Pirate, and you stay Raiders strong.
And that's why they call me